Welcome back to another episode of Jacksonville Buzz's Buzz on Veterans. I'm Steve Strum with Colonel Chris Budihas, U.S. Army retired and a little bit Marine. Today we have an opportunity to talk to Phillip Burt from Southern States Material Handling. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Both gentlemen, before we start talking, thank you for your service to our great country. You've heard this a million times.
Yes,
I'm going
sir.
to say it
Thank you.
anyway.
Yeah,
I really appreciate you guys. Tell us a little bit about your company.
So we're like your one-stop shop material handling solution. So I spent 25 years in the Navy and then came here straight out of retirement. I was retired for about 2 weeks, and now we work on forklifts, conveyor systems, anything that goes into a warehouse. Like we can provide the solution for, which is pretty cool. The best part about the job is you get to see what happens behind the scenes, like how things are made. Yeah. Which every day is a new adventure.
So with your military service, 25 years. First of all, thank you for your service. How did that translate what you did in the military to what you're doing now? Like, what kind of skills did you bring to the workforce, and why did they hire you?
So I was an aviation warrant officer.
Okay.
I came in as an enlisted electrician and then worked my way up. So I had experience kind of managing large maintenance platforms. Okay. And so when I got hired on, funny story, my son was playing baseball, and one of his buddies, his dad, was sitting next to me on the field, and we were watching our kids play. And so we got to talking. Yeah. And he's like, "Hey, have you ever thought about the heavy equipment industry?" I said, "What is that? I don't know what that is." He said, "Oh, it'll be cool. Send me your resume." So I sent it over to him. Like the next day, the HR director called me and said, "Hey, are you available for dinner tonight?" Then our vice president of operations, Lance, a former Marine, drove up that evening. We had dinner, and then he offered me a job a week later. So,
that's awesome.
So it's been awesome. We've grown from 15 people we had 15 technicians when I started. Oh, wow. And right now we're about 70. So
oh, wow. And how long have you been with the company?
5 years.
5 years, okay.
5 years in May.
Yeah. What I heard there was network's important. Obviously, the skills you learned in the military, both tangible and intangible, being in the electronic aviation field was probably, maintenance, you understand processes, but you also applied leadership because being a chief warrant officer in the Navy, they don't give it to anybody. So congratulations there.
Thank you.
Yeah. And the other thing too, you talk about, what is heavy equipment? It's always a fun, interesting, growing up in the Army, that you have, there's the way things are done. And then for people that may not have experience in the military, there's like, okay, well, the way things are done, like there's only one way to make a bed, and that's it. And if I fail, the corners aren't tight, then guess what? I'm doing it again. You talk about heavy equipment. Well, in the military, it's just equipment because there's no such thing. I mean, what equipment in the military is not heavy? Right? I don't think there's any equipment that is not small. I mean, if go look outside of any shipyard and you're like, okay, well, that thing's 1.5 miles long. So what do you bring, as Chris was talking about, as a differentiator, as in operations with this organization, helping lead your team to that next level?
I think what I bring is my people skills, right? So leadership, empowering, getting people, finding how to motivate different people, because there's so many different styles of leadership that are required. Yeah. Like you have a technician base and they require different style leadership. You have your management base, and then you have your solutions where, or sales, where they're coming in and attacking it from a different angle. So I'm really being able to pull back and see the field and kind of understand where do we need to leverage, like where can I make the biggest impact and return on investment of my time. And that's what I really bring to the company is kind of getting in, knowing the people. Like it's scaled, which has been difficult for me. Yeah. But at 15 technicians, I knew, or 15 associates, I knew everybody's name, their spouse's name, their kid's name, what they did for fun, all that. Now it's 70 technicians plus another 20 to 30 staff. It's hard for me to do that at the same level that I was before. Yeah. But caring about them, kind of doing the review, one-on-one interviews, stuff like that, I think that's really where my strong suit is. The technical piece, like I have a background in it, but I am not the expert. So my piece is leadership and kind of engaging with associates to help them be better, help them to be the best versions of themselves.
That's awesome. It's funny, I had a breakfast with a gentleman who had his own company in consulting and coaching at the executive level, and thing we were talking about is the 5 generations in the workplace and the motivations and your ability to know these folks and really understand where their strengths and weaknesses are and help them kind of see it for all generations, see value in that, and provide that human touch. So no doubt you're helping the company with that.
Sure, I think I refer to myself as a human translator, so I'll take the corporate vision, like, hey, this is what we need to do, and then I can translate it to tech talk, and then and kind of what the techs need and what our associates need, I can translate that back up to corporate and say, hey, this is what we need. This is the challenges we're facing. This is how we're going to solve this. And so that's kind of how I control the flow of information up and down.
Being in the private sector, both you guys, as a colonel or as a chief warrant officer, it's a different story when you're in the military. I mean, if I don't say if I don't do what you say, we have a different set of problems.
Yeah.
And there's really not in the command structure. I really don't have the ability to say no because technically I'm property of the U.S. Army, and therefore then I am property of you. And if you're giving me a command, I decide not to listen. I mean, I can go to jail.
Right.
I mean, literally, military prison for that.
Totally
if it's bad enough. And as you translated some of your skill sets from the battlefield to the boardroom, which is what we're talking about, right?
Sure.
Battlefield to boardroom. How did you find that military leadership, but in the private sector where somebody, of course, in this day and age, employment-wise, people could just say, hey, you know what, I'm out of here, and they just go. How did you translate your leadership skills into the private sector where that chain of command may not have to be stuck to as much than it was contractually in the military?
Sure, I think, well, the key
It's a hard thing.
It is a hard thing, and I think you have to lead with influence, right? So, I mean, were there times that I wanted to break out a knife hand and tell someone what, do this now because I said to do it? Of course, but that's not really, the military gets a bad rap because that's very few and far between that are your leadership styles in the military that you're going to be that directive. Maybe in boot camp, in the war field, like on the battlefield, you're going to have to be directive, and there's no question, just do it.
Yeah.
But when you're in a aviation maintenance, I mean, you want to empower your people to, hey, if there's a problem, I want you to feel safe to tell me.
Yep.
Not that you're going to get blasted or that people are going to have, there's going to be fallout from it. I want you to feel safe that you can come tell me, hey, this is a problem, sir. I want to do this to fix it.
Yeah.
And that's really, once you get that buy-in, I mean, everybody feels like if you're on their side, leadership will take care of itself. People want to do good.
Yeah, that's
great.
So that's gigantic because it's funny having conversations with friends. Employee retention in the workforce is gigantic because it costs the company money to go replace talent. So your ability to retain them because they feel my management cares about me, therefore I will be taken care of as an employee. And oh, by the way, I'll become better at my current job and then probably elevate within the organization based on how I perform is probably, it's a great opportunity to build trust within the company itself. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys very much for taking some time to talk. I mean, Chris, always
it's good to see you, sir.
Always fun to ride co-pilot. We're trying to figure out who's Johnny Carson and who's Ed McMahon, but I think I'm going to be Ed McMahon because he's Johnny Carson. We just need to get you one of the big hats. Thank you for joining us today and talking about all your stuff. Really appreciate that. And of course, both you guys, again, without your doing it to it, we don't have the ability to do this. So appreciate you all very much. Guys, thanks so much for joining us on Buzz on Veterans. If you like us, share us. And remember, live with gratitude.
Operation Barnabas is a veterans ministry, started in 2017 with the purpose of helping our veterans that kind of got left behind, and they've struggled with addictions, PTSD, suicidal thoughts, those kind of things, helping them get whole again through one-to-one mentorship.
Being able to communicate with them and help them can drastically change their life, can drastically change a family's life. The little that we can do is put our hand out and say, hey, do you want a hand up?